My possessive girlfriend has segs with her coworker to make me feel jealous. I end my 3-year-old relationship with her as punishment. I, 28M, am at a crossroads in my relationship, and I could really use some outside perspective. I've been living with my girlfriend Lucy, 28F, for the past 2 years, and now I'm facing a tough decision about whether to marry her or not. To explain my dilemma, I need to start from the beginning. Lucy and I have a long history that goes back to our school days. We were classmates throughout high school, but back then, we couldn't stand each other. Our relationship was marked by constant arguments and competition. We'd bicker about everything, from group projects to who got to use the last piece of chalk in class. I thought she was bossy and overbearing, while she probably saw me as a lazy troublemaker. I vividly remember this incident in 10th grade when we were paired up for a science fair project. It was supposed to be a simple assignment, but with us, nothing was ever simple. I wanted to do something on renewable energy, solar panels, wind turbines, that kind of thing. But Lucy was dead set on a project about genetics. We argued for days, neither of us willing to budge. Our bickering got so intense that our poor teacher, Mr. Thompson, had to step in. He ended up separating us and assigning us to different partners. I got paired with Mike, a quiet kid who was happy to go along with my renewable energy idea, while Lucy ended up working with Sarah, the class brainiac. That project pretty much summed up our relationship throughout most of high school. We were like oil and water, constantly butting heads. In class debates, we'd always end up on opposite sides, turning even the most mundane topics into heated arguments. During group activities, our classmates learned to keep us apart to avoid World War III breaking out. But something changed during our senior year. Maybe it was the stress of college applications or the realization that we'd soon be going our separate ways, but we started to see each other differently. I began to notice things about Lucy that I'd overlooked before, like how dedicated she was to her studies, often staying late after school to help tutor younger students, or how fiercely she stood up for her friends when anyone tried to bully them. There was this one time when our school newspaper published an article criticizing the student council, of which Lucy was a member. Instead of getting defensive, she organized a forum where students could voice their concerns directly to the council. I remember being impressed by how she handled the situation with maturity and openness. Lucy's sharp wit, which I had once found irritating, began to amuse me. I found myself looking forward to our verbal sparring matches, enjoying the challenge of keeping up with her quick mind, and I couldn't help but admire her determination and drive. When Lucy set her mind to something, there was no stopping her. The turning point came during our school's winter formal in senior year. I almost didn't go. Dances weren't really my thing, but my best friend dragged me along, insisting I couldn't miss our last winter formal. I remember standing by the punch bowl, feeling awkward and out of place when Lucy walked in. She was wearing a stunning blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and her usually unruly curls were styled into elegant waves. For the first time, I saw her as more than just my annoying classmate. She was beautiful and confident, and suddenly, I couldn't take my eyes off her. To my surprise, Lucy made her way over to me. We started talking, first about trivial things like the tacky decorations and the terrible DJ, but soon we were deep in conversation about our hopes for college and our fears about the future. We ended up talking for hours that night, discovering we had more in common than we ever realized. But despite the connection we felt, neither of us had the courage to admit our growing feelings. The timing just didn't seem right, with graduation looming and our paths about to diverge. After graduation, we went to different states for college. I headed to California to study engineering at Stanford, while Lucy went to New York to pursue a business degree at NYU. We lost touch over the oars, both of us busy with our new lives and experiences. I threw myself into my studies, joined the robotics club, and even interned at a tech startup in Silicon Valley. From the occasional updates I saw on social media, Lucy seemed to be thriving too, joining the debate team, studying abroad in London, and landing impressive internships. Fast forward to 3 years ago, when our high school organized a 10-year reunion. I wasn't planning to go. I had a big project deadline at work, and the thought of making small talk with people I hadn't seen in a decade didn't appeal to me. But my mom, who still lived in our hometown, convinced me it would be good to catch up with old friends. Reluctantly, I booked a flight home. The moment I walked into the gym, decked out in our old school colors, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. Familiar faces surrounded me, some hardly changed, others almost unrecognizable. I was chatting with my old lab partner when I saw her, Lucy. The years had been kind to her, She'd grown into a beautiful, confident woman. Her long brown hair was now styled in an elegant bob, and she carried herself with a grace I'd never noticed before. She was laughing at something someone had said, and the sound carried across the room, drawing my attention like a magnet. Before I knew what I was doing, I was walking towards her. She turned as I approached, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. Then her face broke into a wide smile, and suddenly, it was like no time had passed at all. We spent the entire evening catching up. Lucy told me about her job at a marketing firm in the city, her eyes lighting up as she described the campaigns she was working on. I shared stories about my work as a software developer, the challenges and excitement of working in Silicon Valley. We laughed about our old rivalry, marveling at how differently we saw each other now. As the night wore on, I found myself not wanting it to end. The old tension between us had transformed into something electric and exciting. When Lucy suggested we grab coffee the next day, before I flew back to California, I eagerly agreed. That coffee date turned into a long walk in the park, which turned into dinner, which turned into us, missing our respective flights home. We spent the next few days rediscovering our hometown and each other. By the time we finally said goodbye at the airport, we had agreed to give a long-distance relationship a try. The next year was a whirlwind of weekend visits, long phone calls, and planning our next reunion. We'd take turns visiting each other, exploring our new cities together. I loved Lucy's adventurous spirit. She was always up for trying new restaurants or checking out obscure art galleries. She challenged me to step out of my comfort zone, and I found myself growing in ways I never expected. I remember this one weekend when Lucy visited me in San Francisco. We decided to take a spontaneous road trip down the coast to Big Sur. We got lost, our car broke down, and we ended up spending the night in a tiny motel that had definitely seen better days. But instead of complaining, Lucy turned it into an adventure. We spent the evening on the beach, watching the sunset and talking about our dreams for the future. It was during that trip that I realized I was falling in love with her. About a year into our relationship, we decided to take the plunge and move in together. We chose a city halfway between our jobs and found a cozy apartment with a view of the park. Those first few months of living together were magical. We'd cook dinner together, experimenting with new recipes and laughing at our culinary disasters. We'd stay up late binge-watching TV shows, debating plot twists and character developments. Lazy Sunday mornings were spent cuddling in bed, planning our future adventures. But as time went on, I started noticing some issues. Lucy's possessive and jealous nature, which I'd initially found endearing, began to feel suffocating. At first, it was little things. She'd get upset if I took too long to reply to her texts, or if I mentioned hanging out with female coworkers. I brushed it off, thinking it was just a phase or a sign of how much she cared. There was this incident about a year ago that should have been a red flag. I had a female colleague, Emma, who was going through a tough divorce. As a friend, I offered to lend an ear over lunch. When I mentioned this to Lucy, she flew into a jealous rage, accusing me of having feelings for Emma. It took hours to calm her down and reassure her that Emma was just a friend in need. Things came to a head about 6 months ago. I had a new project at work that involved collaborating closely with a female colleague, Sarah. Lucy became increasingly agitated whenever I mentioned Sarah's name. She'd ask probing questions about our interactions and imply that Sarah might have ulterior motives. One evening, I came home late after grabbing dinner with my team to celebrate a successful project launch. Lucy was waiting up, her face a storm of emotions. She accused me of cheating on her with Sarah, despite my protests that it was just a work event. We had a huge argument that night, with Lucy demanding to see my phone and emails to prove my innocence. I was shocked by her lack of trust and tried to have a calm discussion about her jealousy. But instead of addressing the issue, Lucy surprised me by saying we should get married. She argued that if we were married, she'd feel more secure and wouldn't worry so much about other women. This brings me to my current dilemma. I love Lucy. She's smart, funny, and we share so many great memories. But her jealousy and possessiveness have become a major issue in our relationship. I'm worried that if we get married, these problems will only intensify. I've tried to talk to her about it multiple times, but she either dismisses my concerns or turns it around on me, accusing me of not loving her enough. Last week, I suggested we try couples therapy to work on our communication and trust issues. Lucy took this as an insult, saying that if I really loved her, we wouldn't need therapy. I feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, I can see a future with Lucy. I love the way her eyes crinkle when she laughs, how passionate she gets when discussing a book she's read, the way she always remembers to call my mom on her birthday. We've talked about our dreams of traveling the world together, maybe starting a family someday. On the other hand, I'm not sure I can handle a lifetime of constantly proving my fidelity and walking on eggshells around other women. I worry about what this could mean for my career. Would I have to pass up opportunities that involve working with female colleagues? What about my friendships with women? I don't want to live my life feeling guilty for every innocent interaction. I'm also concerned about how Lucy's jealousy might affect our future children if we decide to have them. I wouldn't want them to grow up thinking that this level of possessiveness is normal or healthy in a relationship. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting. Is this level of jealousy normal? Am I being unfair to Lucy by not understanding her insecurities? But then I remember the look of distrust in her eyes when she demanded to see my phone, and I feel my stomach twist. I've thought about ending the relationship, but the idea of losing Lucy terrifies me. Despite our problems, she's been a huge part of my life for so long. The thought of not having her to share my day with, to laugh with, to dream with, it's almost unimaginable. But then I think about the future. If we're having these problems now, how much worse could they get after we're married? What if we have kids and Lucy's jealousy extends to them? What if I spend the rest of my life feeling distrusted and constrained? I could really use some outside perspective on this. Am I overreacting to Lucy's jealousy? Should I give in and propose, hoping that marriage will solve our problems? Or am I right to be cautious about committing to someone who doesn't seem to trust me? How do I balance my love for Lucy with my concerns about her behavior? If anyone has been in a similar situation or has any advice, I'd be incredibly grateful. I feel like I'm at a crossroads and I'm terrified of making the wrong choice. Edit. Wow. I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your insights and advice. I've got a lot to think about. Update 1. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and I want to thank everyone who took the time to offer advice and share their own experiences. Your comments gave me a lot to think about, but I'm afraid I might have waited too long to make a decision. Things have taken a drastic turn for the worse, and I'm still reeling from what's happened. For the past 2 weeks, Lucy has been growing increasingly frustrated with my indecision about her marriage proposal. We've had several tense conversations where she's accused me of not being committed to our relationship. I've tried to explain that I just need more time to think things through, that marriage is a big decision and I want to make sure we're both ready. But Lucy sees my hesitation as a rejection, a sign that I don't love her as much as she loves me. The atmosphere in our apartment has been tense, to say the least. Lucy has been alternating between giving me the cold shoulder and picking fights over the smallest things. Last Tuesday, she blew up at me because I forgot to put my coffee mug in the dishwasher. What should have been a minor annoyance turned into a full-blown argument about how I don't respect her or our home. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, never sure what might set her off next. Last Thursday, I came home from work, exhausted after a long day of debugging a particularly tricky piece of code. As I walked into our living room, I was surprised to see Lucy sitting on our couch with a guy I'd never seen before. They were sitting unusually close, and I immediately felt uncomfortable. Lucy introduced him as Arnie, a colleague from her office. She mentioned that he'd come over to spend the evening with us, but something about the situation felt off. Throughout the evening, I noticed changes in Lucy's behavior. She was touchy-feely with Arnie, laughing at all his jokes, and seemed to be going out of her way to make physical contact with him. She kept touching his arm when she talked, and at one point, she even sat on the arm of his chair, her body angled towards him. It was so unlike her usual self that I didn't know how to react. I tried to join in the conversation, asking Arnie about his work and his hobbies, but Lucy kept steering the discussion back to inside jokes and shared experiences that excluded me. I felt like a third wheel in my own home. At one point, Lucy suggested we play a board game. As she was setting it up, I saw her lean in close to Arnie, whispering something in his ear that made him laugh. The intimate gesture made my stomach churn. As the night wore on, I found myself growing more and more uncomfortable. Lucy was acting like a completely different person, flirtatious, giggly, and overly animated. It was like watching a stranger wearing my girlfriend's face. I kept trying to catch her eye, to silently ask what was going on, but she studiously avoided my gaze. When Arnie finally left around 11 p.m., I helped Lucy clean up in silence, my mind racing with questions and doubts. After we finished, Lucy turned to me with an expectant look on her face. "So," she said, her tone casual but with an underlying edge, "how did you like Arnie?" I struggled to keep my voice neutral as I replied that he seemed nice. Lucy pressed further, asking if I had noticed anything about how she interacted with him. I tried to keep my cool and told her I didn't feel anything in particular, that it was nice to meet her work friend. This seemed to make her angry, and her face clouded over. Without another word, she stormed off to bed, leaving me confused and hurt in the living room. I barely slept that night, my mind replaying every interaction, every touch, every laugh between Lucy and Arnie. I told myself I was overreacting, that Lucy was just being friendly with a colleague, but a nagging voice in the back of my head wouldn't let me believe it. The next morning, Lucy left for work before I woke up, which was unusual for her. I went about my day, trying to focus on work, but constantly distracted by thoughts of the previous night. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a message from Lucy. My heart dropped when I saw it was a video. With shaking hands, I pressed play, and my world shattered. The video showed Lucy having sex with Arnie. The timestamp showed it had been recorded just an hour ago, presumably during Lucy's lunch break. I felt like I was going to be sick. I couldn't believe that Lucy, the woman I'd loved for years, would do something so cruel and manipulative. I left work early, unable to concentrate, and went home to confront Lucy. When she arrived, I was sitting on the couch, the same couch where she'd been flirting with Arnie the night before. I asked her calmly about the video. To my shock, she didn't even try to deny it or act remorseful. Instead, Lucy launched into a speech about how she wanted me to feel the same pain and jealousy that she felt whenever I interacted with other women. She said she thought that by making me jealous, I'd finally realize how much I loved her and propose. Lucy explained that she had been planning this for weeks, ever since I failed to immediately accept her marriage proposal. She had deliberately cultivated a friendship with Arnie, knowing he was attracted to her, just to use him in this scheme. I was stunned into silence. The Lucy I thought I knew would never have done something like this. As I sat there, trying to process what she was saying, Lucy continued to justify her actions. She claimed that she only did it because she loved me so much and couldn't bear the thought of losing me. She said she wanted me to understand how she felt every time I talked to a female colleague or friend. That was the moment I knew our relationship was over. I told Lucy that her actions were unforgivable and that I was breaking up with her. She became hysterical, alternating between accusing me of ruining her life and begging me to reconsider. But I stood my ground. I explained that her constant nagging, jealousy, and possessiveness had been slowly poisoning our relationship for months. The sex tape was just the final straw. I told her that she had become a toxic presence in my life, and I couldn't imagine marrying someone who would resort to such manipulative tactics. I said that a healthy relationship is built on trust and respect, not jealousy and games. Lucy tried to argue that she only did it because she loved me so much, but I wasn't buying it. I told her that real love doesn't involve hurting your partner or trying to make them jealous. It's about supporting each other and working through problems together. As I was talking, I started packing a bag. I knew I couldn't stay in the apartment with her, not after what had happened. Lucy followed me around, alternating between angry accusations and tearful pleas. She said I was overreacting, that it was just a mistake and we could work through it. But in my mind, a line had been irreversibly crossed. Before I left, I turned to Lucy one last time. I told her that I hoped she would get help, that this level of jealousy and insecurity wasn't healthy for her or for any future relationship she might have. She screamed at me that I was the one with the problem, that if I had just committed to her, none of this would have happened. As I closed the door behind me, I heard the sound of something shattering against the wall. Part of me wanted to go back, to make sure she was okay, but I knew I had to keep walking. I spent that night at a friend's place, my mind reeling from everything that had happened. The next few days were a blur. I took some time off work and stayed with my friend, trying to process everything. Lucy bombarded me with calls and messages, swinging wildly between apologies and accusations. I eventually had to block her number for my own peace of mind. Now, I'm in the process of moving out of our shared apartment. My friend has been helping me pack up my things when Lucy's at work. It's been a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, relief, and everything in between. Part of me still loves the Lucy I knew in high school and during the early days of our relationship. But I know that person is gone, replaced by someone I can no longer trust or respect. As I pack up our shared belongings, I'm confronted with memories at every turn. the coffee mug she bought me on our first weekend trip together, the framed photo from the night we moved in, both of us grinning widely at the camera, full of hope for our future. Each item is a bittersweet reminder of what we had and what we lost. I'm trying to focus on the future and healing from this experience. It's not going to be easy, but I know I made the right decision. No one deserves to be in a relationship where they're constantly doubted and manipulated. I've started looking for a new apartment, somewhere I can have a fresh start. I've also reached out to a therapist to help me process everything that's happened. I realize now that I ignored a lot of red flags in our relationship, and I want to understand why I did that so I don't repeat the same patterns in the future. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice on my original post. Even though things didn't work out the way I hoped, your support helped me see the situation more clearly and gave me the strength to make this difficult decision. I know I have a long road ahead of me, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about my future. Update 2. It's been a month since I broke up with Lucy, and I wanted to give you all an update on how I'm doing. First of all, thank you to everyone who reached out with words of support and encouragement. Your kindness has been a bright spot during this difficult time. The first couple of weeks after the breakup were pretty rough. I moved in with a buddy temporarily while I looked for a new place of my own. Packing up our shared apartment was emotionally draining. Every object seemed to hold a memory, both good and bad. Lucy tried to contact me several times, alternating between angry accusations and tearful apologies. But I've stood firm in my decision to cut ties completely. I've been focusing on self-care and healing. I started seeing a therapist to work through my feelings about the relationship and the breakup. It's been helpful to have a neutral party to talk to, especially when dealing with the complex emotions that come with ending a long-term relationship. My therapist has been helping me recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation in my relationship with Lucy and working on strategies to establish healthier boundaries in the future. I've also been reconnecting with friends I'd somewhat neglected during my relationship with Lucy. It's been great to rebuild those connections and remember who I am outside of a romantic partnership. I've even taken up rock climbing with a group from work. It's a great way to challenge myself physically and mentally, and the endorphin rush doesn't hurt either. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've thrown myself into a new project, which has been keeping me busy and giving me a sense of accomplishment. My colleagues have been understanding and supportive, which I really appreciate. I've been honest with my boss about what happened, and he's been great about giving me the flexibility I need to attend therapy sessions and look for a new place to live. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing. There are still moments when I miss Lucy or find myself wondering if I made the right choice. But then, I remember the video she sent and how manipulated and disrespected I felt, and I know I did the right thing for my own well-being. My therapist has been helping me work through these moments of doubt and reinforcing the importance of prioritizing my mental health. I'm not ready to start dating again yet, but I'm hopeful about the future. This experience has taught me a lot about what I want and don't want in a relationship. I know now that trust and mutual respect are non-negotiable for me. I'm taking this time to focus on myself, to rediscover my interests and passions, and to build a life that makes me happy on my own. To anyone going through a similar situation, hang in there. It gets better. Focus on yourself, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to seek professional help if you need it. Remember that you deserve to be in a relationship built on trust and respect. Again, thank you all for your support throughout this journey. It's been a tough road, but I'm looking forward to what the future holds.